for our quarterly briefing. And this briefing is Participatory Budgeting Project with Nisha Thompson. Before we start, or actually we would like to start with the land and labor acknowledgement. We believe that land and labor acknowledgements are tangible political admissions of the ongoing violence of the settler colonial state and our own implicit participation in it. Anaya, would you go ahead and read our land acknowledgement?
Absolutely. I'm a Black woman with curly black hair, a cheetah print headband, a brown shirt, a black cardigan, and large gold hoops. This land acknowledgement is offered by the Nanticoke Lenni Lenape Tribal Nation for those who seek to honor the Lenape people and their territory preceding an event in Lenapehoking, also known as New Jersey. The land upon which we gather is part of the traditional territory of the Lenni Lenape called Lenapehoking. The Lenape people lived in harmony with one another upon this territory for thousands of years. During the colonial era and early federal period, many were removed west and north, but some also remain among the continuing historical tribal communities of the region. The Nanticoke Lenni Lenape Tribal Nation, the Ramapo Lenape Nation, the Powhatan Lenape Nation, the Nanticoke of Millsboro, Delaware, and the Lenape of Cheswold, Delaware. We acknowledge the Lenni Lenape as the original people of this land and their continuing relationship with their territory. In our acknowledgement of the continued presence of Lenape people in their homeland, we affirm the aspiration of the great Lenape Chief Tamanin that there be harmony between the indigenous people of this land and the descendants of the immigrants to this land, as long as the rivers and creeks flow and the sun, moon, and stars shine.
Maria, you're on mute.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Anaya, and thanks for the reminder. Before I go on to the labor acknowledgement, I just want to say out loud that I am a white woman with brown hair. I'm wearing a black shirt with a black and tan and maroon scarf, printed scarf, and reading glasses and headphones. Thanks again, Anaya, for the reminder. Okay, this labor acknowledgement is offered by Dr. T.J. Stewart, Assistant Professor of Higher Education and Student Affairs at Iowa State University. We must acknowledge that much of what we know of this country today, including its culture, economic growth, and development throughout history and across time, has been made possible by the labor of enslaved Africans and their ascendants who suffered the horror of the transatlantic trafficking of their people, chattel slavery, and Jim Crow. We are indebted to their labor and their sacrifice, and we must acknowledge the tremors of that violence throughout the generations and the resulting impact that can be still felt and witnessed today. For us at Gathering Ground, we read these statements to make visible what has been invisible to many people, particularly people racialized as white. We acknowledge these historical truths of the theft of people and land, enslavement, forced migration, and forced labor. And though this is our history, it must not be our future. We at Gathering Ground are committed to working in community and constant dialogue with all of you in disrupting this fatalistic view and create new norms and new structures for a more equitable world. Thanks, Casey. Okay, before I turn it over to our guest speaker today, I want to tell you a little bit about Gathering Ground for those of you that are joining us for the first time. We are a multiracial, multicultural, multi-generational, and socioeconomically diverse movement of people committed to taking action that creates thriving and equitable communities. Gathering Ground offers a variety of programs designed to address systemic issues and empower individuals to become agents of positive change. From our community engagement initiatives to collaborative learning experiences, each program is developed and crafted with the needs of our community in mind, and with the overarching goal of cultivating a culture of equity and justice. It's because of this commitment, our commitment to equity and justice, that we are bringing this briefing to you all today. At Gathering Ground, we believe that participatory decision-making models and frameworks allow everyone to have a voice, to have a direct say in decisions that affect their lives. Participatory decision-making offers a viable alternative to hierarchical structures that leave the majority voiceless and powerless. That's why we're excited to have Nisha with us today to help to broaden our thinking and learn about new ways of organizing our communities, our workplaces, and our lives. Before I turn it over to Nisha, I just want to tell you we have an exciting program tomorrow so if you haven't registered yet, let me tell you a little bit about it. We are almost at capacity, so register if you can right away. Tomorrow, we are running our third iteration of our Elevating Equity program. It's a 4-part workshop series with Brown University professor Dr. Tricia Rose. The program is Way Out of No Way, Systemic Racism and Resilience. It's an interactive workshop that explores how systemic racism shapes Black life and discover how systems thinking and Black cultural resilience offers a powerful legacy for imagining and building lasting change. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to learn from a preeminent scholar and expert on racism, so we encourage you to register and not miss out. And of course, check out our program calendar for upcoming workshops and events. We're doing our best to bring a variety of programs, both virtual and in person, to you, so stay connected. Okay. I need to acknowledge my amazing team that has worked on this briefing. We have Casey O'Brien, our Director of Programming, Anaya Brown, our Communications Associate, and although she's not with us today, Alyssa Prevos, our Operations Associate. This work is made possible with the support of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, the Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation, the Grunin Foundation, and PSEG. I want to thank all of you to making time in your busy schedules to be with us today and to learn about participatory budgeting. Just a reminder, Gathering Ground team will be facilitating, so drop your questions in the chat or raise your hand, use the raise hand function to ask your question, and we'll try to get to as many questions as possible. Let me say a few words about our esteemed guest, and then Nisha, it's all you. Nisha Thompson is the New Jersey Advocacy Manager for Participatory Budgeting Project, working on their PB Seeds program. The Participatory Budgeting Seeds program connects and equips leaders and advocates across New Jersey with knowledge, tools, and connections in order to advocate for participatory budgeting in their communities. Nisha Thompson is a community organizer for 20 years experience building communities on the ground and online in the US and India, bringing together multiple stakeholders, building alliances, writing policy, campaigning, running events, training, and public speaking, all to further open data, better governance, and transparency. Nisha believes that when all people are actively, inclusively, and equitably participating in governance, using all the tools available, that is when true change comes. And we believe that too, and that's why she's here with us. So, Nisha, I will pass it over to you, and thanks for being with us today, Nisha.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Gathering Ground, for giving me this opportunity. I really appreciate it. Thank you all for coming today. I am very excited to share participatory budgeting with you all. Thank you for that introduction. I'm going to share my screen really quick. There we go. So we're going to do an introduction to participatory budgeting today. We're going to talk about places in the country where it's been happening, what have been the outcomes of that, and the work in New Jersey that we are very excited to be continuing with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation support. So I'm excited to be able to connect with you all after this and ongoing to bring participatory budgeting to your communities. I'm just going to say my email address is at the bottom of the slide, and it will be at the last slide as well. So my background is transparency in government and good government. And I spent a lot of time in DC and in other places looking at the power of information and how to make information more available to people, with the idea that when people have the information they need from the government, they can actually participate in governance better. And I spent a lot of time doing that and realizing that it's not just about information sharing, it is about power sharing. And it's a difference between power over versus power with. And I think this is what really attracted me to participatory budgeting, because it's not just asking the government for something, it is making a decision with the government or with any group of people or with any kind of governing body that has a resource that you need. It could be a nonprofit, it can be a foundation, it could be anything that has a resource that the community needs. And I think this model, this cycle that I'm going to go through, allows for this type of decision making to evolve, to go from power over to power with. And I just wanted to say that this has been used in a lot of different scenarios, but we're going to primarily talk about this scenario in terms of with local governments, because that's primarily what PBP has been doing. I'm also going to say participatory budgeting is very difficult to say over and over again, so I'm going to shorten it to PB. So when I'm saying participatory budgeting and PB, they're roughly the same thing. And there's a lot of ways to do participatory budgeting, but we're going to talk about how PBP, the Participatory Budgeting Project, advocates for it, and how we have been promoting it across this country. Some background about PB is that it was started in Porto Alegre, Brazil in 1989, after a particularly controlling government entity. The new government came in and the people developed this process so that they can make decisions and get things done. So this is not a process developed here. This is a process developed in Brazil, and it has spread across the global south and Europe before it got here. So it has a longer history than what it has in the US. Just thinking about the current power structures that we are associated with civic engagement. We talk about voting a lot. And voting is giving authority to people to make decisions on your behalf. And I would just like to see in the comments, do people agree with this statement? So if you can put a 1 if you agree, or 2 if you don't, that would be just a really interesting snapshot to understand. Because I think people don't usually understand or think about how they're voting and what they're voting for. We are giving authority to people to make decisions on our behalf. And how do we pick those people is really something that we struggle with, right? And I'm just gonna check the chat really out too. People are like, no, I don't agree. That's interesting. I like that. Does anyone want to say something about that? That is the narrative, however, not the real end result. That's interesting. It's 100% true, right? Voting is giving authority to people to manage community resources and solve problems, right? It's kind of the same, but this is really specific. We are giving people the authority to manage our resources and solve our problems for us. I'm going to do it again. 1 for yes, 2 for no, just to see what people feel like about that statement. 1. Yeah. So interesting. Yeah, we are giving other people authority to manage our community's resources and solve our problems. Say yes. People say yes. Anyone have a statement about that?
Any questions?
Cherie, are you trying to?
Oh, I'm sorry, no.
Okay, no worries.
I was just gonna say, and I didn't vote. I was because I don't totally agree. When we vote, we're giving those individuals, we're holding them in trust that they are going to do what is best for the individuals that they represent, right? And and not always to solve our problems, because that's the issue. When we elect people, we think that our job is over. We got to hold them accountable. And so we got to be a part of that process as well. So I don't agree with like giving the authority piece. That's why I didn't vote. But we do elect them to hold them in trust, to be to represent the people's voice. So I look at it a little bit differently.
So thank you for sharing that. Most people in positions are often placed there as a result of privilege, and the best be done include the oppressed. I love it. Thank you all for having that conversation with me. Is this working? I think we've all kind of settled into the reality that this isn't working, right? Like the way things are happening right now is not working. And what do we do with that, right? How do we move forward from something that isn't working and we're trying to get it to work? And I think this is like really the crux of what I talk about a lot when it comes to participatory budgeting. Are we willing to try something new? Are we willing to try something completely different? Because what we've been doing hasn't been working. So let's be open-minded about like, what can we reimagine and dream of for the future, right? And what I'm basically saying, what participatory budgeting sort of promotes is, are we ready to manage our own resources with our community, right? When we manage a budget together, when we are the ones that decide, are we ready to do that? Do we have the skills and the ties and the processes in place to do those things? We have those things for voting. Are we willing to build those things for actually managing our budgets? And this is like a big question, right? This is like the cornerstone of the work that we're doing, of the cohort, but like, are we ready to do those things? Are we ready to advocate for that? So what is PB? Participatory budgeting is a democratic process in which community members directly decide how to spend part of a public budget. And like I said, it could be any kind of budget, but we're going to talk about government budgets for today. And participatory budgeting is a process. It is a difference in how we actually interact with the budget and with the powers that be. So it is a very heavy lift. It is a 6-part cycle that takes usually a year. Some cities do it more than a year because of the engagement required, but it is pretty involved. It's a heavy lift. So these are the steps that we promote. These are the steps that we have seen have been most successful in terms you implement all 6. So we want to push this idea that it is a year-long engagement with these steps to get people to truly and actively participate with their community and with their elected officials. So the first step is designing the process. There's a steering committee that represents the community, creates the rules and the engagement plan. So before you even do anything like idea collection or, you know, ask people to vote, you actually design the whole process. So that includes views like who gets to vote, who gets to give you ideas, who is a part of the outreach plan, who are the people you really want to participate in this, who does the proposal development. You sit and the community members come together, and the steering committee is made up of community members. It can also be like some government people or some nonprofits, but like what we recommend is that the community that will be affected by the money should be sitting on the steering committee to design the entire process. So it's more of you start from the very beginning, once you get the money approved, how you design the entire process, that is a community-led decision. It is not a situation where you get the money, then you start sending ideas in and you vote. We don't recommend that. We actually want the community members to come together. And there's we have many processes on how to pick the steering committee and what does that look like. But this is the first step. You actually go through and you design what the process looks like from beginning to end. There's no requirements, no election, no primary, no fundraising. You get to decide. Oops, sorry. You get to decide, I don't know. There we go. Something's going on. Oh, you get to decide who you think should design the process, who in your community would you want to design its democratic process. And that's sort of the first step in how you look at the participatory budgeting cycle. The second step is idea generation, brainstorming ideas. This is, you build an outreach plan with the steering committee, and then you go and you actually go out and do outreach with community members to get ideas. So what usually happens in the current system is people with time and money get to talk about their ideas with elected officials and give them solutions to their problems, right? So if you have a lobbyist or a nonprofit where they're spending a lot of time with the city or in Trenton, they get their ideas sent up. And if you're involved, it's more likely to telling the intermediaries what you think. This is what if you can just give your idea directly to them without having to go to a city council meeting or go to Trenton? What if there's a table outside the grocery store that just collects your ideas? This is what is happening in this stage of participatory budgeting. And also we do a needs assessment in some cases, or actually events that are tailored towards certain groups of people. So if the process really wants youth, you would go to youth areas like schools, youth centers, and do events with them to get ideas from what they want to see the money be used for. The third step is develop proposals. So this is really the step where our what we want to push is that your ideas are not going into a black box and coming out as voting on the ballot. The community actually gets together and they're called proposal developers, and they do the feasibility checks on the ideas. So the point is you get through the whole cycle, and after the vote, they have to spend the money the way the vote turns out. So if people want a certain project and it's voted for, the feasibility check has to be done before the vote, because you don't want to be in a situation where people vote and then the government comes in and says, well, that's not feasible to use the money for that. We can't do that, right? We want to avoid that part. So that's why all the ideas are put through this many step process with groups of people going through every idea and doing feasibility checks, actually checking in with their communities. I got to sit in on some of these for the LA process, and it's people going, well, my community doesn't want this there or this, and actually writing through and writing out all the proposals. And the ones that don't meet the feasibility checks don't end up on the ballot. And then you work with city planners, you work with the city departments to actually build out what a feasible idea is. And that includes the budget for the idea, that includes timeline, all these things. So you're actually bringing in experts around the ideas to build the proposal out. And I think this is where we really push for this to be a community level event. You can bring people together and they will write proposals. It's the most boring part of any process, we think, as people who work in nonprofits, but people actually really enjoy it. Some of the towns like Durham or in New York City are saying that people come every year to develop proposals. They like this process of actually working through the ideas. So it's not a faceless committee where you're sending your idea and maybe it's coming out or maybe it's not, but it's actually the community coming together and it's very transparent. And people get to talk through why this idea is good or why this idea is bad. And they actually get to think about the things that really matter to the community. One of my favorite stories that came out of Queens in the last cycle was a woman submitted an idea for a dog park in her neighborhood. And she went and worked on the development committee for parks. And the other idea was changing tables in men's bathrooms. And she didn't even know that this was a problem, but like having been on this committee to develop these proposals, she actually didn't even end up voting for her idea for the dog park. She ended up voting for changing tables in men's bathrooms because it was just more important, right? And you learn what people need in your community through this process. I'm going to pause for questions. Are there any questions? It's a lot of stuff. We're only halfway through.
And feel free to use the raise hand function and come off mute to ask your question or drop your question in the chat if you do have one.
Yeah, awesome. Give it another. Oh, we have a raised hand.
Yep. Pilar, go ahead. Come on off mute.
I just want to make sure I understand. Step 2, you said the people who have the time and the power. It was, yeah, time with money and money to get to talk about their ideas. But how is that inclusive of like other people who might not have the time?
Oh, sorry, let me clarify. That's what I mean is happening now.
Oh,
So
okay.
right now, if you want to give your idea on the budget, you need time or money to do that, right? You need to go to a city council meeting, you know, when the budget's happening, right? You have to take time out of your day and you don't even know, a lot of people don't know when you actually can give input in the budget. That's like a specialized thing for people who like have the time or it's their job to kind of know that. But like in participatory budgeting, that's part of the cycle to give your ideas. So it's like a public event, right? People like are doing outreach around it. It's like showing up at school pickups and drop-offs and, you know, in the like shopping areas and things, markets. There's a table set up to bring ideas in. There's like, you know, so it's a more transparent process than what's happening right now. Does that clarify?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for the question. Anyone else have a question? Okay. So the fourth step is you vote. The ballots are created. And then you follow the outreach plan, and then community members vote on proposals that best serve the organization or community's needs, right? So voting happens online usually, and also there are paper ballots a lot of the times, and they're usually translated and things. There's like a lot of ways to vote. So that's step 5 is fund winning projects. So the organization funds and implements the winning ideas. So the government usually will have to fund the winning projects. And that is not the last step, you would think, but we advocate for an evaluation of the process. Did the process meet the goals? Did the people that you wanted to participate? You know, like we want to make sure that the process worked for next year, right? So we want to see this process happen multiple years in a row and that they're evaluated after every process. What kinds of budgets? If you can spend it, you can do PB with it. That's basically the rules around money are obviously there. There's capital funds and program funds and all those things that is baked into the work of the steering committee. But you can use, and we've seen we've seen all kinds of budgets be used. City, county, state, non-governmental sources, discretionary funds, school budgets have been used, public agency budgets, and police and carceral budgets have also been used for participatory budgeting. I'm gonna pause here for any questions. Keep going. So where is PB happening? I'm gonna play this video. Can y'all hear the video?
We're here today to deliberate democracy, participatory budgeting with Bronxites.
This is their chance to have a say in what comes into their community. This is a chance for them to identify their needs, not only for them, but also for their families and fellow neighbors.
It's important because I want to make my community better again. And I would like to expose my community to better stuff.
There are several issues that I feel are important, but the one that resonates to me the most is the disabilities for our young people. That is one that is dear to my heart.
A lot of the ideas generated by the community were based around mental health and mental wellness. I think that is something that's severely impacting the Bronx, and we need to see more of it.
Don't vote, you're not heard. So if you vote, they know you're there.
So that is the Bronx, but PB's happening all over the US and Canada, in some form or another, either one process or many, you know. So this is not something that is a dream, that it is happening in many places, and it's happening in places that are pretty close by. New York being one of them. They've been doing it for over 10 years. They have a citywide process, $4 million that they vote on every year. And they get programs out of it, programs that the community members want. So it is a reality. It can be done. Okay. I'm going to talk about some case studies that are really interesting. And please feel free, if you have a question, put it in the chat, raise your hand, come off mute. There's a lot of detail about these case studies that I'm not going to go into. I'm just going to kind of like talk about them. But if you really want to know some details, like, please do. So LA Repair is one of the projects. They just finished, I think they're doing implementation now and probably planning their next process. But it was a budget justice coalition, People's Budget LA and Reimagine LA, organized for a new approach to public safety and a substantial investment in Black and Brown communities. They specifically wanted reparations. Like this was part of a very large campaign around reparations. It included closing a jail, other kinds of programs that would bring about more equity to LA. And so they got participatory budgeting out of the Civil Rights Office. The budget was $8.5 million, and they did not use current administrative boundaries. They used repair zones that they created using a number of factors. So they used employment and poverty data, home access to internet, COVID-19 case rates, social vulnerability index, the environmental index, and redlining. They use those to create repair zones, and those repair zones got more money or some kind of proportionate amount of money. And that's one of the things that I'm going to bring it back to the cycle the steering committee got to help create. right? They said, we're not gonna do it by ward, we actually want to do it by where the actual neighborhoods where there's the most need. So that's how they are able to split everything up. And that's what's beautiful about participatory budgeting. It doesn't have to be the political administrative boundaries that we're used to. It can be where the need is. That's something that the steering committee can decide. That flexibility and that freedom to kind of build decision-making boundaries is really what makes this process really exciting. And the winning projects were Mobile Street Medicine Program, Job Readiness Program, After School Community Garden Program, Video and Production Training for Youth. And effective PB requires a commitment to racial equity, to shared decision-making from those in government, and accountability systems rooted in a strong base of community members. So the LA work is still going. They're gonna do another process. They're also doing LA County, which is different than the city, and then they are also doing it in an unincorporated area. So they really, the LA group, Reimagine LA, really are dedicated to PB, and they are so excited about the outcome. And they were transparent the whole time. So they recorded all their proposal development meetings. They recorded everything because it was like, we need this process to be accountable. And they were able to do that and able to like move meetings when people were available, offer things like childcare, stipends for people to work. So it was like a really great program. And now they are funding these things. The next case study is Rochester. Rochester, New York had $200,000 on to do anti-poverty project. So a lot of the feedback I get from PB is like, we don't have LA money or New York money, but you can do it with a smaller amount of money too. It doesn't have to be huge, but we would like as much money as possible, right? So this was came out of the anti-poverty project. The budget came from community development block grant. To be eligible, projects had to benefit people experiencing poverty or address poverty in some way. Winning ideas included an emergency housing assistance fund, a tiny house project, and 24-hour childcare program. Now, these seems like really big projects, and you're like, there's no way $200,000 covered those things. But if you looked at the projects, you could see that they're really about building the infrastructure for these projects. So it also doesn't have to be a full, you know, oh, we need to fund all of 24-hour childcare for the entire year. It really was about, well, how do we like invest this money in making a space ready for 24-hour childcare? Because that's really where the issue was for this community, right? They had a building, they needed to like make it ready to take on that, and that's what won, right? Not the full program, but they were able to like, one, show that there's demand for things like 24-hour childcare, and that you can get the space ready, and that they can fund things over long term because people want it. You're showcasing demand for these types of projects as well. So what I really like about the Rochester example is it was designed with a key issue in mind. Once you focus on something, you know, you can actually build a really good process around it. It was beyond capital projects. PB usually gets used for capital projects, but this is like a really good example of like services and funds going directly to the community. Federal funding, that's, you know, maybe a thing of the past now, but it was a good use of federal funding at a local level. And, you know, lived experiences were what won. This is what people needed in their day-to-day life that they had probably been asking for a long time in one way or another, but were actually just able to get. because of the process. And we'll talk about Central Falls, Rhode Island. So Central Falls, Rhode Island had, they started off as students and parents at a high school in Central Falls, voted, had a PB process to talk about, you know, civic engagement, etc. And it was so popular, the Department of Health ran a process for their Health Equity Zones initiative. And the how to spend $385,000 to improve conditions to help us stay and become healthy. And that process, I think, is also in the implementation phase right now. And it was just a way for people to spend money for their physical spaces in the area. This health equity zones are also not clear administrative boundaries. They're created through data and metrics around health in areas. So they were able to kind of get some projects, a sprinkle water park, an outdoor fitness park, and a mental health and the stigma campaign. And this is what they were able to use the money for. Best practices and impact. I'm going to pause for questions. Is there any questions? Okay, keep going. Okay. So what we recommend, money that matters. Obviously, we've seen really small processes like $10,000 or less, but if the money is there, as much money to be put into the pot to vote on would be ideal. Grassroots leadership, this is really key. A lot of the times, if it's not coming from the community or from grassroots, the process gets really muddied. Jersey City did a participatory budgeting pilot several years ago. It was completely top down. It was $50,000 award. People got like an email from the city. They submitted ideas into an online form, onto a black box committee, and then out came a ballot. They voted, and every ward voted for tree planting, and we still don't see the trees. So without kind of accountability measures from the ground up, it really, like, system capture can be a real thing with PB, you know. So grassroots leadership is really important, and that's why things like the LA process were so successful. Inclusive design, this is like, again, something why the steering committee is so important, is that when you design for everybody, everyone can show up, and they do. And when you design outreach to reach people that are not usually included in processes of power, they will show up and they will participate. Focused outreach is very important. So we also promote the idea of, you know, having partnerships with those communities that you want to reach. If you're looking for people that are low voters or certain groups of people that don't, you know, usually show up, you need to go to those communities and find community partners to do that outreach so that this process reaches everybody. And equity criteria. You know, places that get under resourced, maybe they should get more resources, or maybe they should get more seats at the steering committee or more outreach. There's a lot of ways to build an equity into this process if you want to do it. And if you build an equity, then more people will want to participate in this process. People are more likely to vote. After this, civic engagement does go up in areas that do PB. Increase in overall civic engagement, more collaboration between local organizations, funding redirected to local low-income communities, and participants learn about public finances. They also learn about public projects generally, and like how much it takes for certain things to happen. Durham, North Carolina always gives the example, like everyone wants potholes filled and sidewalks fixed, but once they learn it's like $1 million per like foot of sidewalk or whatever it is, they're like, oh, that's not gonna cover it, it's another way. So there's a lot of cross learning about what's happening, why things don't happen, or why things could happen better, and that usually increases trust in government. I'm gonna pause for questions right now. If anyone has any?
Mostly in the chat, we're seeing, you know, comments that are saying like, right, this could be used for different things. So Maria, I see you had one, so go ahead.
I do have a question, and I wanted to give other folks the opportunity to ask, but Nisha, I'm just curious, how does a community or a person bring the idea of PB to elected officials in the town? Is it something how does the process get started to begin with to build that steering committee?
Right, so there's like two phases here. There's like advocating for them to agree to do PB, right? Which is basically the way you would advocate for anything. But we usually start with looking at the actual budget and seeing, okay, like what money is available. New York's process started because of city council discretionary funds. So every office gets discretionary funds, and a couple of city councilors were like, oh, let's use PB for this money. That seems to be the lowest hanging fruit. We have a town in Washington that used marijuana tax. Specifically, they declared racism a public health issue, and so they used the marijuana tax with PB to work on that. So we go and we look through the budget and we see what money can be used, what money is available. And you advocate for that to be spent on PB, right? And there's many ways to set up a steering committee. And it's usually a negotiation with the people who are like holding the money. But there's sortition, which means like people sign up and then they get a random number and then they can be on the steering committee. We saw that in Seattle because they didn't trust the government at all. So they didn't want anyone from the government to be on the steering committee. So they wanted to do something that was a little bit more random, a little bit more ground up. We've seen situations where the government appoints some people to the steering committee and the rest are community members. So it really is depending on your community and what that like advocacy effort looks like. But once the steering committee is set up, there's then kind of like a moderation sort of exercise on how to like start building out rule books. And the rule books are what is created by the steering committee. And that's what's used to like keep the process going.
Thank you. I'm just thinking about, even just like getting people to know about it, know that this is a tool, that this exists. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we wanted to have you here, to really kind of get the word out that this is a viable alternative and allows people to have some say. But I'm just thinking about, like, as a resident myself, I reached out to our mayor and our business administrator, and I was like, hey, we're doing this, not both as a gathering ground and also as a resident, saying, I'd love to incorporate this in our community. Do you know about it? And neither of them had any idea about this at all. And so some of it is like, just how do we get the word out to as many people as possible so that they know that this is an option?
Yeah, that is like a big thing. And I'm gonna like go into it I'm about to hit the Jersey section of my presentation, but there is a lot of work on like just education around direct democracy processes, but does anyone else have any questions before I continue on?
No, we've just got about 35 minutes left here. So again, if you're someone who would prefer to ask your question anonymously, you can drop it as a direct message to anyone on the Gathering Ground team. And then as we close out, we'll stop the recording if you want to ask your question then, as long as we're still within time. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Casey. PB&J. So there is some PB happening in New Jersey. This big blob over here is New York City. They're over there. We're trying not to look at them. But you know, as we've worked here in the last 2 years, we will hopefully see more PB happening across New Jersey soon. And so PB Seeds is planting the seeds of direct democracy in New Jersey. It is our learning cohort. We launched a learning cohort to spread PB across New Jersey, funded by Robert Johnson Foundation. We did a cohort last year and this year. Cherie was actually in our cohort last year. Shout out to Cherie. The goal was to connect people who care about civic engagement and democracy to know about PB and want to bring it to their communities. The cohort starts with an introduction to the PB cycle, learning the technical details of the process. There's a mock process, there's a storytelling workshop, and we build advocacy plans. And then we do one-on-one coaching after for individuals who are moving forward with their advocacy plans. So the cohort is about 7 sessions. And our goal was to like get as many different people from across the New Jersey into a space to learn this process. Since there's not a lot of PB that's happening in New Jersey, people are not as familiar with it. So like we had a California PB Seeds, and in California there's much more participatory budgeting, so people do know about it. So it's a very different type of cohort. So in New Jersey, it started very much like, do you care about civic engagement? Do you care about democracy? Let's start looking at participatory budgeting. And we've, so this is our first cohort. There's Cherie. Hi, Cherie. This with the group in Freehold. So the only town in New Jersey that has been doing, this is our second cohort. That was this year. We just finished in September. So out of the first cohort, we have Trent Town Market in Trenton. Tyrell Smith was in our first cohort. He's opening a farmer's market, and he's going to put 10% of his proceeds into a participatory budgeting process for his local area in Trenton. And he's starting that process now. So he's building his advisory committee right now, and we'll be doing a steering committee soon. We've been like waiting, meeting with the mayor of Trenton. We're hoping that we can actually have a city process, but that's like very in the beginning stages. But right now he wants to run it for his community around his business. This is Freehold. Freehold, New Jersey's been doing it for 8 years, just because they're like the mayor and the city council was really into it. They put $200,000 every year in capital funds into the participatory budgeting process. They're a volunteer committee, so they're very small. Freehold's not a very big town, so it's actually the most money per person of any participatory budgeting project across the country. And they love it. They are really big supporters of PB. The mayor is Kevin Kane. He also is like happy to talk to anyone about PB. He thinks it's a great civic engagement process. So there is PB happening continuously in Jersey, and it's in Freehold. Jen Green is out of the Newark Office of Sustainability. They have just launched their youth process. It's $50,000 for the youth of Newark to decide on climate change, climate sustainability projects in Newark. They have just launched. They're setting up right now. So hopefully we'll have more updates from them next year. So like the New Jersey stuff is coming together. We're definitely getting more excitement. But it's a slow build. I think next year, once a lot of these processes are in motion and we're seeing evaluations and seeing the projects happening, there's going to be a lot more interest in, you know, what PB in New Jersey can do. And a couple of like big questions that's come out of the 2 years of learning cohorts we have is like, are we ready to dream about like a new way to manage resources together, right? A lot of the time, you know, we ask for the money first, not for permission to run the program. And that's like a really like big shift for us. We usually have a program and write a proposal for the program and ask for the money and ask the same 5 people for support or for the money or for them to change their mind or something. But what PB advocacy asks for is give us the money first and we'll decide on the program. And that I think is like a really big shift for people. That takes quite a bit of time to like understand how to flip that, you know. I also like, we're really great at pointing out problems, but are we ready to design around them? The steering committee has been like one of the bigger like things to sort of work on, because people are like, they come in with their own ideas and they're like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. But it's like, no, actually, like, how do you design the process so that everyone can submit their ideas and not just your ideas? And that's like a big shift in mindset as well. And are we ready to like start planning, stop fighting fires? Are we ready to prepare people to manage conflicts and make decisions together? A big part of PB is mediation, is facilitation, is getting groups of people together and walking them through, getting them on the same page, getting them to share, getting them to go through conflicts. And this is something that people are not used to doing together. And like, that's a big part of the skill building for PB. And those are the big things you have to be committed to if you want to do participatory budgeting. So these are sort of the big ideas that I've been wrestling with around PB advocacy, about how to build more PB in New Jersey. And I would love to, we're pausing for Q&A, and see what people think and what they've thought about this presentation. I'm gonna close my thing. I can see everyone now. Yay. Hi.
And we've
Okay.
stopped recording, right, Case?
Well, if folks are comfortable asking their questions on the recording, please feel free to do so. If folks are not interested in that, like, give me a thumbs up or a 1 in the chat, and then we can stop the recording and take questions from there. So if you want to stop the recording, drop a 1 in the chat. And if you're ready to ask your question, jump on in.
Peace and blessings, Nisha. This is Karen Barnett. I'm in Cumberland County, which is in the southern portion of the southern portion of New Jersey. I have a question in reference to whether or not this has been piloted with adolescents and younger individuals. One of the things that I'm finding is that so many of our younger adults are disillusioned with the democratic process. They believe that their voices have not been heard, that their voices do not have power. So I believe that there needs to be a concentrated effort to engage individuals that are younger in the civic process so that they can actually see and learn how to use their voice, in addition to actually being able to develop something where they see it come to fruition and are proud and understand the process, but more importantly, almost co-learn the process, and the parents and or other adults around them see the process because they've been excluded from the process. So I guess my question is, what are you doing to engage individuals that are younger? And is there a less verbiage dense PB for younger individuals that can be implemented in smaller communities that don't have the bandwidth and or discretionary CDBG and or other funds at their disposal?
Yes, I just put a link into Boston's Youth Lead the Change, which is the longest running youth-led PB process in the country. They get $1 million a year. That's all run by young people. Newark's process will be a youth-led process too. They have like 3 19-year-olds out of the Office of Sustainability, working with high schools on their process as well. I'm trying to find a legible link to, I didn't put this one in. Sorry, excuse me. Phoenix Union High Schools in Arizona. They ran a very small process as a civic engagement experiment. And it was so successful, they defunded their police program and put $1.2 million into participatory budgeting for school safety. And there's 3 processes. It was staff, students, and teachers, who all got chunks of money to decide how to promote safety in their schools. So there's a lot of really great engagement with youth, that there we go. That we have seen that has been really, really useful, because a lot of the times they don't want to use like grown-up money, they'd rather use school board money. So a lot of times the first step to getting PB into the community is through the schools. Freehold has I think a middle school and a high school program for participatory budgeting. I think they get $5,000 or something. PB Oregon started as a youth program, and now those youths are like going to the state senate to try to get a state process. It was so successful for them. So I would say that you're 100% right. Like, the youth are so alienated, and they are not like given any kind of like civic responsibility in any way that makes them feel heard. And this, we have like seen this work. And I would love to connect with you offline about how to like talk about PB with youth a little bit more. I think that would be really great. Did that answer your question? I've tried to put some stuff in the chat as well. William, go ahead. Oh, sorry.
I was actually looking, I had opened up the link and I was reading, so I apologize. I guess for me, you partially answered, but I'm looking specifically to have someone, without me having to do the legwork, instead of come in and work with adolescents to show them the process and be able to say, I'm going to take, let's say, $5,000 out of my budget, not waiting for the next election session, and say, I'm going to allocate $5,000 for these youth to, once they've gone through this process, to develop something. All too often, individuals are waiting for funding, and or having individuals come in and train that are not familiar with the bandwidth within the community, and or are not culturally congruent to individuals receiving information from them. In looking at this process, in knowing what's going on within our community and globally with our socio-political infrastructure, I believe that if we're going to do participatory budgeting and increase civic engagement so that we can actually begin to reimagine and readjust what that climate looks like now is the time that we need to be doing that. Now, it's not even strike while the iron is hot. It's begin to create fire breaks because our world is imploding.
Right. I agree. We do technical assistance. That's another group in PVP. So let's connect and talk about it. I think Will had a question. Oh, Will, you're muted.
Sorry, you just on mute again.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, I really appreciated the last comment. And it made me think about the Vote 16 work that's happening in Newark, around engaging young people 16 and up to vote in the school board election. And I wonder if there has been any kind of communication with the groups involved where we think about how this can be one of those kind of catalytic additions, right, to that process to engage more young people. I think the first iteration of the campaigning for Vote 16 went really well. It was a start, and I think something like PB should be a great addition to engage more folks. When young people can actually have a voice, not just in saying who's on their school board, but how those dollars are being directed, it could be a huge value add to that process. And I think that there's an event going on this weekend. I'm not sure if the folks in the PDP team are going to be down there. But it's youth from all over the state coming together at Princeton University to talk about how they use their voice, right? What organizing look like, what different strategies can be employed to have their vision really manifest for them. And so I'm not sure, again, if you guys are down there, but plugging in with the organizers of this event, I just put it in the chat, could be really, really helpful to expand the PB conversation for young people specifically around the state. Because that Vote 16 work is also something that communities around the state are looking at to understand what it can look like to be replicated in other local communities here in the state of New Jersey. I'm excited about it. PB, I think, is an awesome tool to increase not just civic engagement, but to really drive dollars to organizations and strategies, right, and programs that actually have impact on people's lives within community. So I'm excited to continue to learn more. I appreciated the event that you all did last week. I know I learned a lot. And I guess maybe one question I do have, the folks from the Office of Sustainability in Newark, their goal right now, I think, is to keep it in-house within the Office of Sustainability and really be focused on environmental issues. Other organizations in Newark that have kind of been a part of the SEEDS program, do we have links or can we do some connections so I can hear a little bit more about what this looks like outside of the government system and how it actually becomes something powerful that exists within community?
That's a great question. So the cohort that just ended had 2 people from Newark who they work with housing on tenants' rights and things. So we don't have it just finished. So we're kind of building on our advocacy and coaching plans now. So I'm happy to introduce you to them to kind of look at what they're planning. What we have found is that like after the cohort, there's kind of they go back to their communities and sort of talk about PB to them, right? So there's this like step in PB that is like the educational step where you go back to your community and you talk about PB with them, right? And you like explain what it is, what you're advocating for. And I think that's where like people are right now, right? Cherie, we were able to give Cherie some support to start kind of a needs assessment in Orange around the library systems and renovations. So like she's gonna start bringing the idea of PB to the community. And I think like that is where most people are now, because people are not familiar with it. And it's a heavy lift. It's a big lift. This is not easy. This is not an easy thing to do or to get people to like 100% commit to. So there, especially if you haven't seen it, right? It's like you're used to sort of like not really understanding what it is. That's why the youth program is so useful, like in schools to do it. So they actually like, it sort of has no downside really. They're just learning the process. But when you're doing like community work, like it is one of those things where if you lose trust with your community, then, people, it's a risk. So we're like in that phase in New Jersey. We're like building groups of people who understand what the cycle is, understand what it is. That's why for every cohort, we bring them to Freehold during their event. And you like visit Freehold when they're doing their outreach and talk to the Freehold group because they are like, we've been doing it for 8 years and we're going to keep doing it. A lot of time we've seen, like Asbury did it once. think Maplewood did it once. They do it once and they don't do it again. Because it is such a big lift. But like to see it happen every year, to see the enthusiasm around it, that's really important. Because that helps people kind of understand the value of it. Yeah, but I will connect you to the Newark people. It would be great to have a follow-up conversation.
Just one thing. This is Cherie from the city of Orange. We was able to have a great opportunity to have one of our council members take the second cohort. So that gave us a better outlook as a town to have one of our city council member know the process and actually be part of the cohort. So she is and will be working hand in hand with us to build the project for the library and teaching the rest of the team, hopefully as well. So it is fun. And then one more thing, this weekend, if anybody's interested and want to go and see the Newark group, they are having what's called a canoe mobile at the riverfront. I will try to put the flyer in. I am registered to participate as well as volunteer with them all day Friday. But it is going on this Friday if anybody interested.
Thank you, Cherie.
Yes, it was really good to have a couple. We had 2 elected officials in our cohort. A school board member from Plainfield and Quantavia from Orange. So it was really good to have a couple of elected officials there as well. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Taylor, go for it.
So it really sounds to me like PB is how this should always function, or how it even once functioned, like way back at the beginning, right? And even like in indigenous cultures, it's a community led project, and it's really fascinating. At first, when I heard participatory budgeting, I thought about participatory action research, which is like the same thing applying to research, right? And I was like, how can this not make sense? And I think that it would help because I do research on the side, and we gather so much data, and you share the data, then they go up in these journals that people don't even have access to. You're lucky if you have access to, just because you're an author, and there's all this gatekeeping, right? But in this way, like, you're actually doing the research, or you're gathering all the stuff for the community. It's, everything stays within the community. There's no gatekeeping. And I think it's an ideal way of like doing things. Just my 2 cents.
Thank you for that. Participatory action research, we don't do as much as PVP, but we definitely like advocate for it, especially during the needs assessment phase. If you do a needs assessment, the Seattle process, they defunded their police by $20 million, I think, and put it into participatory budgeting. And they started that process with a needs assessment, with a participatory action research document to build out their steering committee. Like, they were like, we're gonna do this 100% ground up, community based. So like, it's a great way to integrate R into PB. And to also like get the community like understanding, like, that this will be slightly different. I think a lot of the communities, are used to an extractive way of giving information and then never seeing the result of it, right? But what PAR does along with PB is like keep it, like you said, in the community. And that's what makes it really powerful in the end when done together. Because you can see, well, we said we needed this, and we were able to fund it, and we controlled the process the whole way. It's really empowering. It could be like a great way to build trust. So thank you for that.
Thank you for the PB in schools link. I actually downloaded the guide, and we actually have a meeting coming up on October the 11th, and we will be moving forward with actually implementing that as a community project, not a school project. I actually function as a community and school collaborative, and within the culture of our schools right now, with our schools specifically being 120 personnel deficient, getting them to, well, credentialed educators deficient, getting them to actually implement something like this within the school setting will be kind of prohibitive. However, being able to extend this to students within the community as a resource and activity is not. So thank you for putting that link within, dropping that link in so that I could access that information. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And I'm gonna put my email in the chat. It was also at the last slide, but we didn't do the last slide.
Well, we would have shared your contact info anyway.
Okay.
Nisha. Yeah,
Great.
absolutely.
Thank you, Maria. Thank
Of
you.
course, of course. And we have about 9 minutes left. I want to just kind of share some thoughts. I mean, I think one of the reasons we wanted Nisha to come here today is because, I mean, it really demonstrates how this is a successful tool. And Nisha was able to give us examples of small budgets to larger budgets. And I had the opportunity to attend the participatory budgeting conference over the weekend, and we learned about what different town cities are doing across the country. And it's incredible. It's really incredible how successful it can be if there's buy-in. And that's part of the process, is really the advocacy work to get buy-in and get people to trust this process. I do want to say really quickly that I think it takes, sort of like muscle building, and I know, Nisha, you mentioned that part of the process is managing conflicts, right? And getting people to decide to come to a decision. And we understand that. And I just want to give a quick shout out to November 13th. We have another briefing on consent decision making, which we think is also an important skill that needs to be built and practiced to help us get to participatory decision making and participatory budgeting. So again, this is sort of like a participatory democracy track that we have this fall at Gathering Ground, because we want to really lift up and elevate values of equity and justice through our practices and the way we think and move in the world. So please join us on November 13th. The registration link is already in the chat. I want to thank all of you for being here. Your feedback is super important to us. So if you have a couple of minutes just to take a quick survey, we would love for you to do that.
And while folks are clicking on that link to fill out the survey, it'll just take a couple of minutes to do. It's designed to be pretty quick and painless. Nisha, there's a question again from Karen in the chat about would you be open to supporting an initiative through swag? And then I've got one other comment about the November 13th briefing that we'll be doing.
It depends on how much swag. I think we do have some stuff. We don't have a lot, but yeah, I think we have PBC stuff for people, and we got continued support from Robert Johnson, so we will be running a cohort next year, and in the year after. So send me an email. I will join. I'll put you on our mailing list. I have a newsletter, and that's when you'll hear announcements for our next cohort for 20 participants. Yeah, I think so. I think we have some stuff. I can send you notebooks. I think we have and things like that.
Beautiful. One thing I just want to add on to what Maria said while folks are taking a minute to fill out that survey. And again, we super appreciate you filling out the survey, because what it helps us understand is like what you're getting out of these programs. And it then helps us understand, what we're adjusting, where we focus our time and attention, and how we can advocate for more of the kinds of programs that you want. So the November 13th briefing that's coming up on this, trajectory of participatory democracy, starting with, Nisha's fantastic presentation around budgeting. Ted Rao, who's going to be leading that, is an internationally recognized practitioner of democratic decision-making processes, and specifically consent decision-making processes. You can check him out on sociocracyforall.org. But we're really delighted that he has agreed to join us. I believe he's going to be in Germany at the time that he is going to be joining us. So we're just really excited to have, someone like him be a part of this work as well. So Maria, I'll turn it back over to you to kind of close us out these last couple minutes, and if there's any last burning questions from anybody.
I'll leave us a few seconds for questions last minute, or thoughts or aha moments that anybody wants to share with us. It'd be great to hear from you. Thank you, Asia. Thanks so much. Okay, well, again, it seems like no one else has any questions or comments. My high school teacher would say wisecracks. Those are accepted as well. If anybody has a wisecrack they want to share. Okay, well, in that case, thank you so much for being with us. Nisha, thank you so much for agreeing to do this with us. We'd love to bring Nisha back because we think more people need to know about this. So that's part of our commitment to really, helping with the advocacy. Yes, thanks. Yeah, we want more people to know about participatory budgeting and alternative ways of organizing our communities. And so thanks again, Nisha. Thank you to Robert Wood Johnson, Geraldine Dodge Foundation, PSEG, and Grunin for supporting this work, and for you all for making time to be with us today. Thank you. Stay connected and be well.
Thank you all. Thank you for the invite. So nice speaking with everyone. And email me.